Hi, I'm Marty Nemko. A while back when I was a columnist at The Atlantic, I had, at my editor's request, written a piece about who has it better or worse, men or women. And I made the argument that women have it better because they have more choices. He liked it, published it, but he got bombarded immediately by women's activist groups and he felt forced to fire me. In any event, I wrote a related piece called Our Approach to Men Reinvented, and just reread it, thought it was worthy of your time, and made a few updates, and I'd like to read it to you now. Maybe you'll be moved to action by it, or at least maybe your eyes open just a bit, because the media is always saying how it's a man's world. Well, it's far from being a man's world. Never really quite has been and is less so than ever now. The essay is called Our Approach to Men Reinvented. Imagine a world without men. You wouldn't be able to read this, watch this. No computer screen. Probably no chair you're sitting on. No air conditioner or heater that's making you comfortable in your room. For that matter, you wouldn't have a room. It and its materials were likely developed and installed by men, from the subfloor to the roof. So are the birth control pill that kept you from getting pregnant, the refrigerator that kept your baby's formula and your food fresh, the car that gives you freedom of movement, or the mass transit that environmentalists prefer. Beyond necessities, men have given us information transmitters, from the printing press to the television, from Google to the iPhone. Wisdom from Plato and Plutarch to Kant and Kafka, Victor Davis Hanson to Christopher Hitchens, and presidents from George Washington to Barack Obama. And lest all work and no play make dull boys and girls, men have given us entertainment, from Shakespeare to Spielberg, Rembrandt to Rothko, Beethoven to Basie, Beatles to Bono. You might not even be able to defecate without men. What percentage of toilets would you guess were built, installed, and repaired, not to mention sewer lines cleaned out by women? No less than lesbian feminist Camille Paglia wrote, "If civilization had been left in female hands, we would still be living in grass huts." Yet over the past half-century, as a side effect of the appropriate increase in women's opportunities, there's been an accelerating effort, a successful effort to diminish men. Just a couple obvious manifestations. President Clinton's press secretary, Dee Dee Meyer's book, Why Women Should Rule the World, and New York Times columnist Maureen Dowd's bestseller, Are Men Necessary? Even more telling is Hannah Rosen's cover story in a Father's Day edition of The Atlantic. Its title, The End of Men. Its core contention is that men are better suited for the Neanderthal era and Industrial Revolution, when success usually depended on brawn and individual testosterone, quote, poisoned competition. Rosen argues that today's success requires women to be in charge. She writes, for example, quote, "Men are women's new ball and chain," end quote, and, quote, "maybe male DNA is shifting. Maybe they're like those frogs. They're more vulnerable or something, so they've gotten deformed," end quote. Yet somehow men have accomplished the aforementioned. The male bashing dispirits not only the intellectual men who read publications like The Atlantic. Average men and boys are force-fed a diet ever more larded with images of boorish, sleazy, idiotic men shown the way by wise women. We're in our 8th decade of man as oaf media, from Ralph Cramden to Homer Simpson. Even in the majority male Super Bowl audience, commercials constantly present man as cretin, hopelessly impotent men who are literally in the doghouse, cowed by their women master. There was a commercial that showed the man in the doghouse being beaten up by a woman. Or they're mumbling supplicants, begging for a woman judge's charity. And lest you think I'm cherry-picking, turn on your TV. How often does a show or commercial portray men as superior to women? And in the schools and the colleges, men are deemed as oppressors, predominantly, and women are as heroes. 35 years ago, when I began helping people choose their career, both sexes were equally optimistic about their future. Today, except at the C-level, in which fewer women are willing to work the very long work weeks and take the years to get technical enough and move their families across the country to get the necessary promotions, most of my female clients correctly believe the world is their oyster, and my male clients are disproportionately despondent and or angry, and not going to college. In 1960, the male-female ratio of college degree holders was 61:39. Today, in an era in which a college degree has become a virtual necessity, a mere hunting license for most decent employment, the ratio is completely reversed. It's 60-40 in favor of women. Yet despite men's serious underrepresentation, many scholarships are set aside for women, few for men. Student groups are funded to encourage women, for example, future businesswoman groups, far fewer for men. So it's not surprising that men's unemployment rate is now higher than women's. As you know, so many young men are back living with their parents, high and or playing video games while the young women are launching their careers. Women earn 80 cents on the dollar? It's a misleading statistic. But what about that statistic? Well, the statistic implies that for the same work, women are paid less. Well, the evidence indicates that far more often there are fair reasons why women are paid more. For example, among people claiming to work full-time, men work an average of 7 more hours a week and work for more continuous years and so are paid more. 92% of workplace deaths and severe workplace injuries, like amputations, black lung disease, occur to men, so they get paid more for choosing dangerous work. Special note need be made of the military. 97.5% of the deaths in Iraq and Afghanistan wars have been men. Maybe that's surprising in light of the media's hiding that with such phrases as the men and women serving in Afghanistan. One might ask, why are only men allowed to serve in direct combat? Why are only men required to register for the draft? Even within a profession, when men earn more, there are reasons other than sexism. For example, men physicians earn more, but that's because they're more likely to choose specialties such as surgery or cardiology, which are higher stress, have more irregular hours, and require longer residencies, while women are more likely to choose pediatrics or general practice. A rich research literature documents that sexism is not at the core of pay differentials, reported widely, even in the New York Times. And a study from the London School of Economics finds that more women today want to be housewives, supported by their husbands, than even in the 1940s, before the feminist movement was even a twinkle in Germaine Greer's eye. Alas, the media chooses to ignore all that research in favor of the broad brush. Women earn 80 cents on the dollar, caused by sexist men is the implication. Rather than try to help men close the employment gap, government deliberately exacerbates men's deficit. For example, government pressures business to have, quote, targets, virtual quotas for women, a, quote, protected class, but not for men. And women-owned businesses receive special preferences in landing government contracts. Corporations themselves deliberately exacerbate the unfairness to men. Women, but not men, are encouraged to form committees and caucuses to advance their sex in the workplace, often at men's expense. Examples: mentor programs for women only, special training for women only, fast track to executive positions for women only. Rather than demand work-life balance, men are more likely than women to throw all of themselves into their work, for which they are often dubbed with pathologizing labels like out of balance and workaholic, rather than heroic, for being so contributory, even if it costs them their life. Indeed, men die 6 years earlier than women, a major cause being stress-related illnesses such as heart attack and stroke, and that men's cardiovascular system deteriorates faster than women's. Estrogen protects. True, the occasional foolish old boy still unfairly promotes a man over a woman, but today, sisters help sisters, not denigrated, let alone sued as sexist, but encouraged. For example, former UN Ambassador Madeleine Albright said, "There's a special place in hell for women who don't help other women." And such statements have broad impact. For example, a Google search on that sentence reveals 100,000 matches. Men's efforts to organize into groups have typically been ridiculed. For example, portraying men's groups as troglodytes tromping into the woods to beat tom-toms. And men's organizations have been pressured to admit women, for example, the service clubs, Rotary, Kiwanis, and Lions, while the long female-only Seroptimist remains that way. The Boy Scouts have been forced to be changed into Scouts. The Girl Scouts remain Girl Scouts. Further limiting men's ability to organize, men's groups don't get the enormous free advertising that the media gives to women's groups. Serious unfairnesses to men extend much further. Examples: in an era of higher employment for men than women, why do men still more often pay for dates? Why do women more often than men feel okay about dumping their spouse or boyfriend because he doesn't make enough money? Is it fair that if a man makes the momentary error of impregnating a woman, even if she falsely claimed to be on birth control, he is stuck with 18 years of financial and parental responsibility? Is it fair that only the woman has the choice to abort a child? Is it fair that the EEOC's definition of rape includes this: if you've had one drink, then had sex, and later claim it was unwanted, it's rape? And what about men who need social services? Countless social services focus on women, far fewer on men, even though, for example, men's suicide rate is 4 times as high. And in the worst unfairness to men, when women have a deficit, for example, they're, quote, underrepresented in science, we see a massive redress, despite the 2-decade study reported in the New York Times that found that women in academic science fare as well or better than men. By the way, all the citations here, the assertions that would benefit from a citation are in the text version of this. To find it, just Google our approach to men reinvented. Yet when men have the ultimate deficit, as mentioned, they live 6 years shorter. A search of PubMed, which indexes 3,000 medical journals for the last 70 years on the terms women's health and on men's health, reveals many times as many studies using the term women's health, which is a proxy for the amount of outreach and research that are aimed only at women. And in terms of outreach, there is a sea of pink ribbons, but only a trickle for prostate cancer, and even less for sudden heart attack, which kills many more men and earlier. There are 10 federal agencies on women's health, none for men. 39 states have offices of women's health, none for men. Bottom line, since 1920, the average lifespan advantage of women has grown 400%. Some feminists shrug that off with such statements as, well, women were previously excluded from those studies. They didn't care about women. In fact, when women were underrepresented in those studies, it was usually because women were less willing to volunteer for the risk of experimental treatment. Fewer women are in prison, a major source of subjects. Researchers appropriately did not want to risk exposing women of childbearing age to an experimental drug that could damage a fetus. Other feminists blamed men's dying younger on not taking good care of themselves. Oh, if only they'd see the doctor. Well, would those feminists say that to African Americans, who also don't see the doctor as much and smoke and drink at much higher rates than other men? Alas, things will likely get even worse for the next generation of men. Have you not seen Girls Rule t-shirts? Have you ever seen a Boys Rule t-shirt? How do you think that makes boys feel? More seriously, the U.S. school system has heavily replaced boy-friendly competition with girl-centric collaboration, boy-friendly adventure stories with soporific to boys, tales of girls' relationships, and created new history textbooks disproportionately extolling women from Sacagawea and Pocahontas to Simone de Beauvoir and Sally Ride, while sparing no pages to pound home the evils of white men, from Hannibal to Hitler, Joe McCarthy to Timothy McVeigh. And when children can't endure school's large amount of seat work, boys are put on a Ritalin leash at a ratio of 8 boys for every 1 girl. While of course one can point to examples of unfairness to women, it's incorrect to assert that today men on balance have an unfair advantage. The world is better when both sexes are valued. For every customer-cheating, wife-beating, sexual harassing guy, there are many more ethical men working hard to be productive and to support themselves and their family. For every manipulative, hormonally crazed, girls just want to have fun woman, there are more diligently striving to have it all, career, family, and a personal life. Good people all. People with real potential to make a better society for all. It is time for a truce, one that's fair to both sexes. 1. We must end the gender bashing, male or female, in the schools, colleges, and media. 2. It's time to end intentional discrimination against both women and men, as documented in the examples above. 3. It's time for serious men's studies programs at university that don't merely parrot the unfairly male-bashing rhetoric of women's studies. 4. It's time to pay due homage to men who do so many of the dangerous jobs women don't do, from roofer to rodent remover, and invent the aforementioned things that women hadn't invented. Should we not honor the contributions fathers make to parenting? For example, fathers often balance mothers' tendency to not enforce limits. Fathers often leaven mothers' protective instinct by encouraging reasonable risk-taking. 5. It's time to accept the multi-option man, just as we accept the multi-option woman. We appropriately celebrate women having options other than being a stay-at-home mom. Women absolutely deserve the right to, on the merits, compete for jobs from carpenter to clarinetist to CEO. But we must now legitimate the full range of options for men, from stay-at-home father to 80-hour-a-week scientist. The stay-at-home dad who wants to be a part-time artist should be respected as much as a woman who chooses that option. The man who chooses to work long hours should not be pathologized as a workaholic, but revered as a long, hard-working contributor to society. Society, often with the encouragement of the woman in his life, makes men feel, even in today's feminist era, that they, the men, must generate most of the family income with a steady, good paycheck. So he so often suppresses his dreams, for example, of a more creative pursuit until retirement, by which time he may be too old, sick, or dead. This should be the option of the multi-option man as well as the multi-option woman. And finally, it is time to enter the censorship of pro-male perspectives like the one in this essay. As I mentioned, I was a columnist at The Atlantic till I wrote a column that made the points in this essay. The editor liked it very much and published it, but then was pounded on by activist women's groups, whereupon he felt he needed to cave, and he fired me. I'll stop there. America will be better if our goal is merit-based treatment of both men and women. In any event, I thank you for watching. I welcome your thumbs up, accept your thumbs down. I always look forward to your comments, and especially like it if you hit the share button below. Share on your social media so that my efforts can have broader impact. And I am flattered if you choose to subscribe to my channel, and certainly would welcome you taking a look at any of my 36 books. Probably most relevant is A Dose of Reality, but all 36 are on Amazon. Because this is a podcast, I like to end with this as I end all my podcasts. My How to Do Life podcast. This is a quote from Frank A. Clark, which I believe is more relevant today than ever. We find comfort among those who agree with us, growth among those who don't.